Hi, Kamil. What a great pleasure to have this, to be able to have this chat with you. So, Kamil, you have been a musician for how many years?
Well, it's difficult to say specifically. It depends how you measure the musicianship. But I've been mucking around with music for a while, maybe since I was 15, 14. I started recording my own kind of stuff.
So that's just 5 years.
When I was 15, to 5 years, I look very young, no wrinkles, no gray hair. So yeah, I'm a newbie. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But it was mainly until a couple of years ago, just for fun and not really gigging much, except for some invited little gigs here and there when I was in Scotland and in Poland, where I grew up.
So
it's only since I came to Australia.
Yeah. So you are originally from Poland. You were born in Poland.
Yeah, that's right. So my mom is from Poland, and I was born there, and I grew up there until the age of 21, and then I went to study in UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did. This is an interesting thing we shall come back to later, of course, about something you and I share with our academic lives. You know, a little kind of insane thing we have. But you did your first. You studied molecular oncology at the University of Glasgow.
Correct.
Right, and when you first started as a musician, what was your first instrument? What did you start playing?
So that was a bass guitar that my father got for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I was mucking around. But really, the first instrument was a flute that my dad brought from East Germany.
Mm-hmm.
It was communism, and you didn't have much back in those days in Poland. So my dad every now and then would go for trips to East Germany or Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he brought this huge, big flute. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And I started playing this flute just for fun. And then I would make one recording and record it on an audio tape, on this old school kind of audio tape recorder. And then played from one and then add some other bits and bobs, maybe make some beats and record it on another cassette. So it was just like this very dirty type of fun, but it was
lo-fi.
It was lo-fi. And then the next thing was just putting some water into different instruments and hitting it or swirling it to make some funny sounds, or playing with the sticks on the guitar, percussion sticks, so things like that. Very experimental.
Sounds good. Sounds interesting. And you also then took up percussion at some point.
Yeah. So percussion was during the days when we had this kind of a punk rock reggae band, garage band. When I was maybe 15, 16, we had the punk rock garage band. And I was playing bass there, but I was really intrigued by the percussion. It was really stimulating for me and intriguing. So I started picking up a little bit of the percussion with my friend who was playing percussion in our band during our breaks at school. We would be hitting our laps. We would be hitting our laps, and then before we start the rehearsal, I would give it a go a little bit on the drum kit. So that was the beginning. But around the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, actually, we started having gatherings in the forest with African drums, gathering around the fire and playing drums and dancing and whatnot.
Sounded like fun.
Ecstasy in the forest with the drums and the fire.
I imagine in summer.
Yeah, that's right. Because winters in Poland very, very harsh. Big mountains of snow.
It's kind of like a more of an Arctic kind of climate. I take it. I imagine, having been to neighboring Sweden a few times.
Oh, yeah. Very close. So I grew up in the northern parts, indeed, in the place called Hell, believe me or not.
And, was it hell?
In fact, it looks very pretty because it's at the tip of the peninsula on the Baltic Sea, very close to Scandinavia, the very northern parts of Poland. So it's very pretty, but it's called HEL. And somebody asked me, do you know what it means, what it's associated with? And I started looking at it, and I found out that it's related most likely to the Scandinavian mythological goddess called Hela. Half deteriorating, half decomposing, kind of
like a zombie.
Half beautiful, like a zombie, half beautiful woman kind of thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that's where I was born, and we are very cold in Poland in general. So summer times we were playing drums and had this kind of a reggae vibe going on, and listening to a lot of African and reggae music, so Jamaican music and Caribbean music as kids, which was unusual because it was communism and it was Poland. So I don't know how we were getting this music in
That's interesting.
There were friends who had access to this kind of music, older friends, because I always had older friends. So.
And there were cassettes mostly, these kind of reggae music?
Cassettes.
Pirated or recorded?
Pirated. Yes. Or recorded, or borrowed, or inherited. Whatnot. So this was the kind of a business that was going on, and everyone would share. So we would then spend long hours copying those cassettes as well.
Yeah. Tape to tape.
Tape to tape. Yeah.
Those were the days. And then at some point, you developed yourself, you developed your musical practice, and you ended up in India studying Indian instruments. Tell us a bit about that.
So basically I had what one may refer to as psychospiritual crisis of some sort. So I...
before or after the PhD?
It was after the PhD, during my postdoc. So it was, I was doing a postdoc at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Center. And it was my 5th year there, I think. And at that time I was also married to a beautiful Mauritian woman, but because I was so possessed by science, I hardly had any time for the relationship, and that ended up in our breaking apart, and also me reevaluating what is important for me, what is meaningful. So I took a giant leap of faith, and I just went for what was supposed to be only 1 month holiday. Trekking in Kashmir with my mates from Scotland, actually, where I did my PhD, and eventually it ended up being 2.5 years of traveling, and mainly spending time in Asia, mainly in India, in Himalayas, and South America.
Yeah. So how did you? Because I think once when we were hanging out in one of those music festivals, dusty music festivals, you alluded to me that you studied Indian, I can't exactly remember which instrument it was, but you studied in Kolkata.
So I was, that's right. So I happened to end up, after I spent a nice time in Himalayas, I ended up in West Bengal, in Kolkata. And when I was in Kolkata, I happened to meet Baul people there. So a few steps backward, I was traveling essentially with just one backpack, and the backpack contained an instrument, and inside of the instrument there were a couple of cloves. And that instrument was a handpan, hang drum. And back in those days, it was 2013, very few people actually even heard about it or seen it. So when I turned up in Kolkata with this instrument, I was sitting one day in a restaurant eating, and then I saw this poster, and it was World Music Festival in Kolkata. And so I went there with my instrument, and there were some rooms, smaller rooms, where the musicians were kind of rehearsing or talking to one another. And I just went to one of those rooms and joined the jam, basically, on the handpan, and they were all blown away by the sound. And it was just like, what is this UFO looking like instrument? Where does it come from? And it looks very ancient in a way. But so when I told them that it's been made in Switzerland and it's relatively new, they couldn't believe it. So this, fakirs from Bangladesh, were there too. They were like eyeballing this instrument. They couldn't believe it. Touching it, like, this was mystery for them. So then I had a good opportunity through that interaction to play with them at this festival. And they invited me to spend some time with them. And I had a good fortune to go to Shantiniketan with these people, Baul people. So the capital of Rabindranath Tagore. And that was an amazing adventure, because they play so many different instruments. Dota is one of them, it's like
the two-string,
two-string. And then there was a kamak, which is like weird kind of an
under the
instrument with
arms.
one string under the arm. It's like a rhythm instrument, but you got the pitch as well.
It's a wonderful instrument. Yeah.
It's a wonderful instrument. So yeah, I have got one at home.
Oh, can you play it? I mean, no. Well, it's up to you. You could give us a little.
I can play it. I can show it. I can play it. I don't play it often. 1 second. So
here we are.
This is what it looks like. Basically, it's this very mysterious-looking type of instrument.
Yes, made out of organic materials.
Made out of organic materials, and basically the way it works, you usually have got some wooden element but I will just strike it with my finger.
Sure.
So I will just bring it down so we can see it. So I'm holding it underneath here, underneath my armpit.
Wow, you're making me feel homesick now.
Yeah, so you come from Bengal as well?
Yes, I was born in Kolkata. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So I didn't know that. How wonderful. What an amazing place it is. I love Kolkata.
It is. It's interesting because it used to be the capital of the British Empire in India. Then after independence, it lost a bit of its prominence. Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore became the main Indian cities, and Kolkata became a bit of a regional city. But it is interesting that most Europeans that have been to India, after they went to Kolkata, they have a very different experience.
Ah, that's very peculiar indeed.
So it's because it's funny because it's not as modern as Mumbai or Bangalore. It's a bit more old-fashioned. It's very crowded, and all those things that you associate with congestion in India. But I suppose there's a charm that attracts people.
Yeah, definitely, and it's definitely a musical capital of India.
That's interesting.
That's what I've heard. And so that was these were the adventures, and then I happened to meet this kind of a modern fusion band called Baulana, who were fusing this traditional Baul instruments with a more modern arrangement, so electric guitar, a drum kit, cajon, maybe, and things like that. So it was very, 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 very peculiar. And I spent some time playing with them. So that was also a very interesting experience. And that was my first really exposure to tabla, because Supratim, who I became friends with, he was an amazing tabla player in that band. So that was my first exposure to tabla really back then and there. But I didn't practice it much. I just had to go to another place, so I didn't continue that, but it's definitely planted seeds because I have been practicing tabla after coming back from India here in Australia. So that was interesting, and also that planted a seed for Bansuri flute, which I have been practicing with Vinod Ji here in Melbourne.
Vinod Prasanna.
Vinod Prasanna, for the last 2 years. So that has been also a very interesting journey, exploring the wind spirit instruments.
Interesting. Definitely an interesting story, interesting musical story that you're sharing with us. And so the tabla, are you mainly teaching yourself, or you've got a guru somewhere?
No. So as far as tabla is concerned, I had for a little while under the guidance of Supratim, but he gave me also DVD. And I've been playing percussion already, basically different world percussive instruments for the last, pretty much since I was 15, for the last 15, 20 years. So that was a technique, obviously is very different, but I had pretty good grasp of rhythm. So I've learned with my friend's father. So you might probably know, because he's quite well known, Shivam. He plays slide guitar, crystal slide guitar. He's one of few people here in Melbourne, in Australia. He's now in Byron Bay, that plays this instrument. And his father is a very interesting character who is actually a brahmachari, but he had been playing tabla for decades. And whenever they come to visit Amma here, the Guru Ammaji, the Amma, the hugging saint, they stay over at my place. So over the last 4 or so years, whenever they come, I'll be receiving lessons from his father on tabla. So I've been having this guidance from him. He showed me the technique, and from then on, I have been developing it by myself.
That's really interesting. And of course, Kamil, I first met you, of all places in the world, at an outdoors, dusty, hedonistic electronic dance music festival called Rainbow Serpent. Maybe 2 years ago, even longer than that, maybe 2-3 years.
It was 3 years ago now. I think
3 years ago, and it was
a year before the lockdown. So
it was a year before. 3 years ago, and you were playing with our friend Bruce Kundalini. You were playing percussion, and that's how we met, and we found out that we are both mad enough to be doing a second PhD.
Yeah, that's so true. I have never met anyone, so that was a wonderful encounter in that regard. It was a
wonderful encounter. And the place where we met, it was not in the corridors of a university or a library. It was in a dusty, crazy music festival, electronic music festival.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So which is kind of, amazing, one of those encounters. And of course, since we met, you have been involved in several musical projects. So what are some of your projects in Melbourne?
Okay, so I have been involved for quite a number of years with the Caribbean Association Victoria. So they have got a band that plays the Caribbean sort of music and Latin Brazilian music. They have got a nice setup with steel pans, etc. So I have been playing percussive instruments there, mainly timbales and congas and bongas, etc. Different kind of rattles. So that was an interesting experience for me. We played a number of gigs around Australia and Victoria. My favorite was probably Jamaican Festival. It was a big event, and a lot of heavy smoke in the air, as you can imagine.
All sorts. Not just from the barbecue.
So you get high from the high vibes, basically, not only musical. And that was great. So that was one of the things, and I'm actually continuing now in a duo set with Ken, who has been a founder of this band. We have got a little duo. I play the drum kit and he plays the steel pans. And sometimes we have got some guests on the guitar, on the trumpet, and we've been playing gigs around sort of a duo calypso jazz kind of a thing. And then I have been playing with Bruce. So Kundalini Project and Kamilindo. We've been playing sort of a fusion music, blending natural organic sounds of different instruments, world instruments, so flutes and mainly, and different world percussive instruments such as berimbau, from Brazil, because I also spent quite some time in Brazil studying music there. And so this interesting flavor fusion kind of stuff, and maybe a little bit of a psytrance depending on the type of a gig, and or more kind of a trip hoppy beats as Bruce likes to do. So we've been playing a little bit here and there, and also another thing is a South American band that we have got playing sort of a music influenced by South America with Luis and Robinson and Saja on the bass. So we have got this nice set playing sort of a classical Andean music, and also more typical songs from South America, well known, as well. So that has been fun. And I'm also doing my own solo thing, which is what I refer to as ethno sound healing journeys. So essentially creating soundscapes that are sort of my natural improvisational thing. And every time I do it, it's different. But essentially, the idea is to use sound, use those healing frequencies of instruments from around the world. We are talking about gongs, flutes, berimbau, didgeridoo, yidaki, etc., and creating this kind of a soundscape that is conducive to inner exploration and grounding, and hopefully well-being as well, because that's sort of links to my interest in well-being as someone who is finishing PhD in clinical psychology.
Oh yes, of course, and of course, well-being is something that is very much in need right now in the world, given what we are going through, and that brings us to obviously. It was kind of interesting because I was going to ask you about what you were doing during the lockdowns of 2020. But as I mentioned, as I ask you this question, we are going into lockdown in Melbourne tonight for another 7 days.
Exactly. This is an interesting synchronicity, as I was explaining to you, because the other day I was watching some of the interviews that you did in the past, and this was, around the time when there was reflecting on the COVID and lockdowns, and I was like thinking, it was so long ago. I don't even, I can't even relate to it anymore. And here we are today, and we're just entering the lockdown, 7-day lockdown. So I find it very peculiar.
Indeed, it's rather bizarre, and some would say. So obviously, the lockdowns of last year were of last year, but now that we are going to have a 7-day lockdown, and I hope it's 7 days, but who knows, right? And so as a musician, you had a few gigs lined up. So all these gigs are now going to be on hold?
A lot of gigs, man. A lot of gigs. Yeah, all of this. Well, I will be able to play one gig today, actually, because the lockdown kicks in from midnight.
Squeeze in as much as you can in one evening.
Squeeze it in. So yeah. So this is a nice little intimate gig that I do on a weekly basis on Thursdays in a beautiful Mongolian yurt on High Street. Mm-hmm. And this iconic Silk Road Rags shop, which is a beautiful place run by this beautiful Russian lady who is a friend of mine. So we have got this beautiful ethno soundscape journeys that I'm doing there with a little bit of a guided meditation and inner exploration. So that will be happening today. So I'm really looking forward to it. And then we had, with Bruce Kundalini, our journeys as well at the Olinda and next one in Belgrade in the yoga studio. And also we had the gig coming up this Saturday with the South American band. So all of this is not going to happen.
All on hold. So, and obviously this is the story being repeated over and over again with all the musicians in Melbourne, not just Melbourne, all over the world, in fact. But of course, we are here in Melbourne right now, and we're talking about the local scene. So many gigs were cancelled last year, and so much income was lost. And but obviously, you have been a musician as well as an academic. So you have had this kind of balance. I don't know whether the word balance is right, but you've had this two planes you could rest upon and consolidate yourself, so spreading your eggs over 2 baskets instead of all in one. So how do you feel about the lockdowns as a musician first?
Yeah, well, I have to say that, it's indeed is a big relief to be able to make my living from other things rather than just music. And I always feel a lot of compassion for all the musicians. And in fact, even today, there is a meeting via Zoom. Boite organized a meeting for musicians. How can they support one another in those challenging times? So I think it's very meaningful to have those conversations and have that level of support. But for me, the lockdowns are usually okay because I'm a kind of a meditator type of personality. So I like seclusion. I like introspective time as well. Even though I might come across as a very talkative and extroverted person, I also have got that part within me that is very quiet, that likes to be simple and minimalistic, and it doesn't disturb me much that I don't have gigs, that I don't have people around me, because I can just easily switch and just go inwards and reflect deeply on things and find time for all those explorations. So for me, I'm one of those weird individuals that I haven't been that badly affected by lockdowns. Nevertheless, I feel for all the people and particular musicians. It has been a very, very challenging time for them. So yeah, so for me, the lockdown had different phase. The music wasn't as much of a problem for me, but other things that came up. And for example, one of them was supporting my ex-partner on her journey through cancer. So during the first lockdown, she got diagnosed with quite advanced cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
So that was the journey for me, the journey of actually moving in with her and supporting her through the treatment that she was going for 2 months almost. And so that was the journey for me. And of course, I sometimes would play instruments for her when we were there as well. So
that's fine. And do you find that because of the lockdowns and because of the fact that there's nothing else to do, of course you've got your PhD to do, but we will come to that. But there is nothing else. There's no hangout. There's no parties. There is no after parties. So do you find that this is a good time to explore yourself even more deeply as a musician? Like do the things that you were in the back burner?
Absolutely. And that's what I want to be doing now. So if this lockdown going to be extended, hopefully not, I will definitely use it to, because I got myself this nice external duet sound card. So I want to start recording my stuff as well and play around. I've got plenty of ideas, and I want to start recording it, because so far I've been mucking around mainly with looping pedal, with looper and stuff, creating compositions like that. But now I really want to sort of formalize it and get into some proper recording. So that would be fun.
Yeah, well, that's always a good time when you've got nothing else to do, and then you have all this time, and then it's great to be able to explore those things that you always wanted to do, I suppose. And of course, you're also going to use this time to further your PhD a bit.
That is a must, because there's not much time left, as PhD students, we're always struggling with support, financial support. Scholarships are
indeed
limited only for 3 years, and rarely anyone is capable of finishing within that period of time.
That's right.
Especially when the COVID hits in and you can't continue. I couldn't continue recruiting patients and interviewing them, because Peter Mac, where I'm conducting my research, the cancer center, has been closed down for any type of research, and it's only recently it's all reopening. So I started recruitment and moving towards the interviewing phase to boost my data set. But this is also an opportunity for me to sort of sit and do some data analysis. So I actually did a little bit even before this interview. So every day a little bit. So that's how it works, and eventually you somehow end up with this beautiful thesis that nobody's even going to read, probably, except for the reviewers,
the examiners.
The examiners, yeah.
Yes, that's the kind of dilemma that we all have as PhD students and academics, right? Like all this hard work we do for years, and who is the audience? How many are there? That sort of stuff. Your second PhD is in clinical psychology, am I right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
And there is some relationship to your first one as well, isn't it? To molecular oncology, because it has to do with cancer and cancer treatments.
Exactly.
So you are one of those rare individuals who would have done 2 PhDs and also has a flourishing, yes, fingers crossed, and also has a flourishing music practice. So do you find that being as academics, we have this very highly cerebral mind? Do you find music in a way is a challenge to that? Music is also cerebral in its own way, but do you find that it gives a bit of a balance between the two worlds inside the head?
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. I have to say that for me, my relationship with music is like a relationship with my sort of a poetical side, with my softer part, more emotional part that has always been there since a kid. And it allows me to express things in a different way. But science and creative process in music are very similar, contrary to what many people think. In fact, I think the one complements another, because in music, if you are serious about music, you also test things out and you are prepared to make mistakes and errors, and you then grow from those errors, and then you sort of see things from different perspectives, and that's how we grow. So that process that occurs in music and in science is sort of intertwined for me. But music has always very soothing effect. So especially when I play flute, and working with the wind is very intimate experience, because the breath is directly connected to our emotions. So, you know, if we are a little bit agitated and distressed, our breathing becomes very fast and shallow. And you know, one way is to, of course, slow down the breath, put our hand on the chest, the psychological approach to that. But another one is to grab the flute and just be single-pointedly concentrated on, you know, the sound and the breathing, you know, and the subtlety of the breath is also important. So there's this very fine, refined kind of element to it, which I really enjoy, and it takes me to places, you know, whenever I take in particular flute or tabla as well, because it's a very finesse, very complex kind of a instrument. So there's this almost like a kind of a spiritual experience to it. And by spiritual, I don't mean anything grand. All I mean is just a opportunity for inner exploration, you know?
Indeed. Yeah. So, and it looks like you've got it sorted with your PhD journey and your musical journey, at least for the time being. And you are expecting to finish your studies in 6 months or something?
Yeah, exactly right. So this is it. This is
the grand plan. And what's the plan? And what's the plan after that? Would you, obviously we are living in very precarious times and our borders are closed, but at some point, obviously, perhaps we shall be able to travel again. And do you have any plans? What are your plans for the unforeseeable future?
Yeah, so when I finish my PhD and if the borders are opened, Pradip, what I really would like to do, and it's been coming back to me over the last few weeks, and even cried a little bit about it, missing my parents a lot, missing my family, you know. It's been now almost 4.5 years since I last saw them. And I was planning to go to see them this year because I got invited to give a lecture at the conference. None of this had happened. Hopefully next year there will be opportunities to go and visit them. So going to conference and spending time with my family. So that would be something very, very meaningful and important for me. But apart from that, as far as the grand vision is concerned, I am really hoping to take this ethno sound healing journeys to another level. I've been bringing it to yoga studios and different ecstatic dance events, 5 rhythms events, and the feedback that I've been getting has been amazing. People really go through some shifting, some letting go, releasing of the emotions, and it's been very surprising for me because I didn't realize that it will affect people in such deep ways. As a clinician, observing it, it intrigued me, and I'm hoping to develop maybe some research project, collaborating with some of my neuroscientist friends, looking at the brainwaves of people experiencing this ethno soundscape journey. Because from what I've been hearing phenomenologically, so them reporting back to me what happened to them during the session after me witnessing them shaking, crying, or things like that, they would be telling me that they, for example, relived their birth, or they've been encountered some beings or animals, some archetypical beings that were cleansing them with feathers, things like this. And what that indicates to me is that potentially they are entering non-ordinary, or you may say altered or alternative states of consciousness, and that typically are accessed through a variety of entheogenic substances, medicine, psychedelic sort of approaches. So, it's like a lucid dream-like state. And if we connect them to the brain measuring devices, we may be able to see, for example, gamma wavelengths or theta wavelengths, which are very subtle type of frequencies corresponding to those altered states of consciousness that oftentimes are associated with connecting to the unconscious realms where usually pain and trauma reside. So I'll be really curious to explore that, because I think it's not only very satisfying and fulfilling for me, because it's where I'm merging those two different worlds as a psychologist and a musician, but also because I see the potential value in it, and people could benefit from it. So hopefully I will be able to do that research project. And finally, the biggest vision would be to kind of establish wellness center, where I would bring into the equation, into the perspective, different modalities. So kind of a comprehensive approach to well-being, to healing, not only mainly cancer patients, focusing on cancer patients and cancer survivors, because there's a lot of distress among cancer survivors as well. The fear of cancer recurrence, problems with sleeping, problems with anxiety, problems with identity, and so on and so forth. So bringing all these different modalities that I have been exposed to, including those sound journeys, to create some program, some kind of a workshop that could be delivered in a meaningful way to those groups of people. So that's something I would like to explore.
Looks like you're going to be a very busy man, but pleasantly. So yeah. Kamil, that was a lot of fun. That was a great pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pradip. It was very nice having me here. It was a great honor and privilege. So thank you.
Great pleasure.